I'm going to take a little time and walk you through an example of something real that we created for a client, but we fictionalized it and anonymized the data to show an example of how you can build a dashboard that can actually be used to effectively manage contact center staff. And so one of the things that you'll see here is we have an overall contact center scorecard. And so think of an area where it's an inbound contact center. You're taking calls that are coming in through an IVR with specific skills or call trees that the agents are taking. And there are supervisors who manage the different agents, right? And so what we've done is we've created a scorecard. You'll see down here, these are all of the fictional agents in this contact center. They have an overall rep score. They have a talk time score, an after call time score, and a rep activity score. And so essentially the way that you can interpret this is it's an overall score from 0 to 100 where 50 is essentially average. And what we do is we break down their activities as a contact center agent into 3 different categories. Talk time, how effective are they when they're actually on the phone with a caller? After call time, meaning once a call is done, how effective are they at finishing their notes and wrapping up a call? And then their activity score, which means how active or how much is their time being utilized for value add activities, right? If you think about a contact center agent, the value add is them either being on the phone or finishing up a call after a call has been done, finishing the notes, and then being ready for the next call, right? So they should be efficient while they're on the phone. They should be efficient at finishing their notes after they're off the phone. And then they should be immediately ready to take another call as opposed to being on a break for 20 minutes before they're ready to take another call. So that's the rep activity score. And so what you see is an overall snapshot of their score in each of those categories, as well as their overall rep score. You also have a breakdown by the individual supervisors. So you can see Toby, Anna, Gilbert. These are all supervisors and how their individual reps work right there. You have a date filter if you want to filter in on a specific area. So if you were doing like monthly one-on-ones with your contact center agents, you could narrow in on a specific month and see how they did in the past month. If you're a supervisor and you wanted to see how your team was performing, you could filter into your specific name and take a look just at your team. You can see here for Gilbert, if you look at his team, you see Priscilla, Jody, Carla, Frank, Yvonne, and Damon. And you can see that Damon is the lowest performing on the team. And if you really try to dive into that, what you'll see is that's because his talk time and his after call time is really not very effective. He's actually decent from an activity perspective, but he's just not very good on those specific areas. So in this example, what does it actually mean to be good in talk time, after call time, and rep activity score? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's dive into talk time and look a little bit more specifically, right? So in many contact centers, one of the things that exists is you have different skills or call trees or topics that calls are coming into a contact center, and the agents have to be able to speak to the callers about those specific topics. So in this example, we're talking about a healthcare environment where the calls that are coming in are related to a specific EMR or electronic medical record system. So Allscripts, Cerner, NextGen, those are all EMR systems. And so these individual contact center agents are skilled to be able to answer questions that are associated with the callers who are calling in about a specific type of EMR system. And so in this case, what we can do, if we want to dive into and investigate a little bit, we can dive into Damon. And what we can see from Damon is in total, he's taken 2,358 calls. 551 of those were about Allscripts, 1,004 were about Cerner, 803 were about NextGen. And so we're looking into talk time right now. So what does talk time mean? So talk time is broken down by over all of the agents who take calls about a specific topic. We take the average amount of time that it takes for all agents who take calls on that topic to answer questions about that topic. So you can see for Allscripts, that's 2 minutes and 55 seconds. For Cerner, that's 3 minutes and 1 second. For NextGen, that's 2 minutes and 56 seconds. And then we take the average talk time it takes for that specific agent. And so you can see, just as an example, for Damon, he takes 3 minutes and 43 seconds on Allscripts, as opposed to the average across all agents as 2 minutes and 55 seconds. So he has a 1.27 talk time ratio, meaning he takes 27% longer than your average agent to talk about Allscripts topic calls. And what you can see is at 27%, 22%, and 27%, he takes on average significantly longer than your average agents on each of these topics. And then that is multiplied to create a score, which then kicks him out a total talk time score, which is created by weighing the distribution of calls that he takes, meaning 23% Allscripts, 43% Cerner, and 34% NextGen. And what you can see is on average, he has a talk time score of 40.05. So the thing that you can conclude if you are Damon's manager here is that he does a pretty good job of handling call volume. He's just not very fast when talking to the clients. We need to give him better training or better resources so that he can be more efficient or faster while he's working his way through all of these different types of calls. So moving on to after call time, we do the methodology exactly the same, but now we're looking after call. So let's look at Damon again. And what we can see is that on average, when all agents take Allscripts calls, they take 1 minute and 6 seconds after the call is hung up to wrap up the call and be ready to take the next call. But Damon on average takes 1 minute and 20 seconds. And then for Cerner and NextGen, he takes 1 minute and 17 seconds, which is 16 seconds longer than your average agent. So again, he's in the 20th he's 20% slower in those areas as well, which again leads to his lower score as associated with after call time. And so what we're trying to do here is really narrow in on how can we manage the agents to be as efficient as possible. And the answer could be maybe they need better resources and better training. Maybe we need them to specialize in this, and instead of taking calls from all three, maybe somebody is really fast at taking Cerner calls, but really slow in the other two areas. So maybe we should have them only take Cerner calls and then move somebody who's faster in the other areas to focus in there. This starts to give you some insight into how the agents are performing so that you can really start to understand how you can more effectively manage them to handle the call volume that is coming in. And then finally, when we look at representative activity, and what we mean by this in simple terms is that we're basically saying what percent of time at work is an agent in a value add status. And what we mean by a value add status is they are on a call, they are ready for a call, or they're in after call work, meaning they're wrapping up a call. Breaks and meals, personal time, IT issues, training, those may be necessary, but they're not value add status. And what we want is efficient agents who spend a lot of time in a value add status. And so what we can see here, we have a percent of time in value add status with Lee being our highest at 82.6%. And then down here we have Lucinda, who's at 45.4%. So if we want to know what's going on with Lucinda, we might just click on her. And then what we'll see when this little chart over here shifts is that she's spending a remarkable amount of time in training. In fact, she's spending significantly more time in training, almost 30% compared to an average of under 5%. That she must be new, right? And if we're managing contact center, we would probably know that. So it's acceptable in her case that she's probably not as performing from an after call work. Bradley is the same. But then if we work our way up, what we'll find is Carla, who is the third least efficient contact center agent. Carla is spending an inordinate amount of time in break and meals and an inordinate amount of time in personal time, as well as significantly more time in after call work as well. So this is somebody who is spending more time on break, more time at meals, more time with personal time, whatever that means. And then she's not particularly efficient in after call work as well either. And so that's where you could start to make some decisions about how you want to manage the performance of those contact center agents. The final thing that we look at is from a call volume perspective, how are we staffed versus when call volumes come in? And what we do is we create a heat map that shows when calls are arriving over time, as well as how effectively are we staffed based on the anticipated call volume that we're going to receive. And what we can see is we have the average number of calls arriving by day of the week and hour of the day in the chart on the right here. So we can see Wednesday midday, Tuesday midday, Monday midday are some of our busiest times. Really, the middle of the day is pretty busy overall. And then based on staffing, we can see what's the average number of calls per hour by day of the week that we expect each representative to take. And what we can see over here is that on Saturdays in the afternoon, we have a couple of spaces where we're getting over 6 calls per hour that we expect them to handle. So if we're making a staffing plan, that might be an area where we want to think about adding a little bit of staff to help balance out that workload, right? And you can filter this by the specific topic, the specific skill tree that you're going to be working through as you do this. Overall, I know this is a lot of information, and if you're not in a contact center, there's probably a 0% chance that you've watched this far. But what we were able to do with one of our clients where we built this scorecard was create this for them, overlay it over their system, which was Five9, and allow them to really critically analyze their contact center staff of about 150 agents who are working about 26 different skill trees that were coming into their contact center. And what they were actually able to do while they were doing this is they found agents who were dodging calls, who were going on not ready for 3-4 hours a day just to avoid taking incoming calls. And it was causing them not only obviously to not handle as many calls, but they were actually having a financial penalty because they weren't meeting SLAs on their ASA because they weren't supporting the number of calls they expected based on their staffing plan because they had agents who were dodging calls by going on not ready. And once we put this scorecard in place, they were actually able to identify 3 to 5, I don't remember the exact number, but it was 3 or 5 different instances of that happening. And they were able to weed out those agents who weren't effectively going on a ready status when they should be, hire new people, and without changing their expense from a staffing perspective at all, they got significantly more efficient because they no longer had agents who were actually dodging calls. They also were able to identify which skill trees they needed to invest in from a training perspective or a resourcing perspective, because agents were really struggling to efficiently answer questions around those skill trees because they didn't have all the training material they needed. So having this level of insight, even though it's very granular, allowed the supervisors in the contact center to dive into each of their teams and really figure out how they could more effectively manage them to drive improved performance inside of their contact center.